in the world will be transported to Eretz Yisrael. So let's go to the section where it says 22, the first page. That's the Gemara in Megillah. So we didn't do the second part, which means there are two columns there, and we're going to read the second column where it's underlined. Tanya, starts with the word Tanya. It was taught in the Brisa. Rabbi Lezer HaKaper Eilu. Rabbi Lezer HaKaper said, the synagogues and the study halls means the yeshivas. Years ago, it would do, even today, we have shuls and yeshivas. So in a shul, people learn Torah. In the yeshiva, people also daven. But I guess this building is designated for learning mainly. That's called Beis Medrash. And this building is mainly designated for davening. It's called Beis HaKnesses in Hebrew. So in the future, the shuls and the yeshivas in Babel, which is Babylon, will be reestablished in Eretz Yisrael, which means in some sort of miraculous way, Hashem will bring these shuls to Eretz Yisrael. Shenem, as it's written, Kitavar b'horid u'chakarmel b'yam yovel. Just like Mount Havatover among the mountains, and Mount Carmel, Pharaoh shall come into the sea as a result of his defeat at the hand of Nebuchadnezzar. The two mountains, they came to the mountain, they came to Har Sinai temporarily. Nevertheless, they'll be established in Eretz Yisrael. The shuls and the yeshivas, which were designated permanently for Torah study, certainly they will also be reestablished in Eretz Yisrael. Now, again, we know Moshiach comes will be miracles, so this could be understood in a very simple way, literally, that in a miraculous way, all these buildings that served as a shul, the yeshiva, in Eretz, in all the countries in the world, ultimately will return and they will be in Eretz Yisrael. In fact, this is an interesting thing because there's a Gemara that discusses the following. It says, in Shema, we say, that through this, your days and your children's days, those who live on the land will be long days. In other words, whoever lives on the land of Israel will merit to have a long life. So the Gemara says this means that only people who live in the land of Israel merit to have a long life. The Gemara asks, how can you say that? We see people living outside of Israel, living here in Babylon, and they also live a long life. The Gemara answers, but these are people because they go to shul every morning to daven, or they go to yeshiva to study Torah, therefore they merit to have a long life. So one of the commentators on the Chumash asked the question, how does that answer, how does that resolve the problem? The problem was, it appears from the Chumash, only people who live in Eretz Yisrael on the land will merit a long life. And here we see people who don't live in Israel, and they also have a long life. So he tells me they merit because they go to yeshiva and they go to the shuls. But that still doesn't answer the question. Here it appears that only those who live in Israel. So isn't it a contradiction? Here it says everybody gets a long life and they go to yeshiva, to a shul, and here it says only those who live in Israel. Plus, I'd ask another question. Why does it say those who go to yeshiva or those who go to the shul? It should say those who study Torah and those who daven live a long life. So this is in the Kli Yakar in Chumash on the pasuk Leman Yirbu, and he says a beautiful thing. He says, no, it remains only those who are in the land of Israel will have a long life. But being that the Gemara says here that when Mashiach comes, all the shuls and all these yeshivas will be transported to Israel. which means this room we're sitting in right now is going to be in Eretz Yisrael, which means we're walking and sitting in a room that ultimately will be part of Eretz Yisrael. So if we have merit, we can all have a long life because it's considered as if we are in Eretz Yisrael. Get it? Basically, according to this, it means that it's sort of a physical thing, saying that Hashem will transfer all buildings and will use as a yeshiva or as a shul in the time of Galus, it'll be transferred to Eretz Yisrael. So again, this refers to every shul. But one of the things that we read last week was what it says before this, that there's two opinions that which is the shul that is in the place, which is the shul that's called a miniature Beis Hamikdash. And we said that according to the Gemara, there's two opinions, but they're not contradicting each other. They could complement each other. One opinion says every shul and every yeshiva, and one opinion says is the shul that belonged to Rav, who was the leader of the generation. And how could you say that both opinions are not contradicting each other? Because it means that in a smaller scale, every shul is a miniature Beis Hamikdash, in the miniature temple. But on a larger scale, which shul stands out amongst all the shuls, that it stands in the place of the Beis Hamikdash stronger, that's the shul that belongs to Rav, who was the leader of the generation. How can we say that there are levels in, yeah?
We know that our state is a form studio, so it's not the single like continue to Israel and if every country and will be
No. We're going to move to Israel. But I'm saying the shul, the actual building, let's say, imagine America is America, and New York is New York, and Kronheitz is Kronheitz, but this building will be in Eretz Yisrael. How it's going to get there, what's going to happen with this spot, I can't reveal everything right now, but we know that it's going to happen. So that's what I'm saying. Not that we're going to be here, it's as if it's Israel, but that this will actually be physically in Eretz Yisrael.
We're talking about the thing after this, Eretz Yisrael were.
Yeah, it says that the holiness of Eretz Yisrael will spread to the rest of the world. Eretz Yisrael will be so holy, it'll spread to the rest of the world. But even then, Eretz Yisrael will still be holier than the rest of the world. So let's look at page 2 here. Proof that there are different levels of small temples. This is what we spoke about last week. How can there be different levels? If the definition of a Beis Hamikdash meaning that Hashem is revealed, how can there be different levels? So that's the discussion we had last week. That even when we say Hashem is revealed, there are different levels, and we use the analogy of memory, an analogy of things in my head that are there in a subconscious way. Some things I remember right away. Some things can take me a few minutes to remember, but after a few minutes I remember. Some things can take me an hour to remember. And some things I can't remember at all, but if somebody reminds me, then I remember. What does it mean? That all these things are in my head, because if it wasn't in my head, there's no way I could remember it. But the difference is that some things are in my head very close to the surface. So all I need to do is just learn about it a little bit, and it comes back to me. And some things are just further away from the surface. So I have to struggle sometimes 5 minutes, 10 minutes, 20 minutes, and try to remember what was it that I heard, how was it said, and then finally I get it, but it's there. So too with Hashem's presence, He's everywhere, but the fact that different levels means in some places He's there more consciously, and some there more subconsciously. So the proof that there are different levels may be brought from the beginning of the segment of the Talmud under discussion. Concerning the Shekhinah's place of residence among the Jewish people during the exile, the Talmud states, wherever they were exiled, the Shekhinah resided with them. When they were exiled to Egypt, the Shekhinah resided with them. When they exiled to Babylon, the Shekhinah resided with them. Where in Babylon does the Shekhinah reside? So the Gemara says, Abaya says, in the synagogue of Hutzel and the synagogue of Shef Yavish. This does not mean in both synagogues at once, but rather sometimes in one and sometimes in the other. That's what it says in Gemara. So now we explain what does that mean. The phrase "the Shekhinah resides within them" indicates that the Shekhinah, Hashem's presence, is manifest in special places, such as the Mishkan and the Beis Hamikdash. In exile, the special place in which the Shekhinah manifests, in synagogues and study halls, like Rabbi Yitzchak said in the passage quoted earlier, these synagogues and study halls are called small temples because Hashem's presence is revealed there. The subsequent teaching then that the Shekhinah resides in the synagogue of Hutzel, and why I didn't say two places, because sometimes it was here and sometimes it was there. Now we're explaining why two places. Let's turn the page. The synagogue of Babel implies that in these two synagogues, the manifestation of the Shekhinah was superior to what it was in other synagogues and other study halls. You can imagine there were tens of thousands of Jews then. They didn't have one shul or two shuls. They had hundreds of shuls. But these two stood out. An explanation, what does the word mean? It doesn't mean in both synagogues at the same time. Sometimes in one and sometimes in other. This indicates that even between these two superior sanctuaries, there's one special place that actually stands instead of the Beis Hamikdash. And that place hosts the primary dwelling and manifestation of the Shekhinah. In other words, being that we say that there's one shul that stands out because the head of the Jewish people davens in that shul or lives in that shul, teaches Torah in that shul. So there was a time where the head of the Jewish people was in one city, and then when he passed away, there was another person who was the head who lived in another city. So therefore, sometimes it was here, sometimes it was there. So we see from the Gemara, where the Gemara says, every shul is instead of the Beis Hamikdash, but there are certain shul that this stands out more than others. And again, by the way, this idea that there are different levels of Shekhinah is not new from the Gemara here. It's a general concept. The Gemara says that there are 10 levels of Kedusha in Eretz Yisrael. The land of Israel is holier than all other lands. That's one. Yerushalayim, is the city, is holier than all the cities in Israel. That's two. The mountain in Yerushalayim is holier than the entire city. And by the way, when we say holier, it actually means in reference to certain halachas. There's certain halachas that only apply to Israel, no other country in the world. Hey, there's certain halachas that apply only to Yerushalayim, no other city in Israel. There's certain halachas that apply only to the mountain, not to all of Jerusalem. There's certain halachas that apply only to the spot where the Beis Hamikdash was, not to the whole mountain. In the Beis Hamikdash, there's certain halachas that apply only to the first part, only to the second part. It goes on. And then there's certain halachas that apply only to the Kodesh HaKadoshim. So there are 10 levels of Kedusha. If that's in Gemara, if we translate that in our language that we're talking, it means there are 10 levels of how the Shekhinah dwells in different places. Which means in certain places Hashem's presence is more revealed and more open, more pronounced, and certain places it's more hidden. And again, if you need a muscle to think of it, always think of the soul and the body. Because Hashem and the world is like the soul and the body. And if you ask me, is there an neshama in my pinky? Yeah, I see it. But you really don't see it in the pinky. It's a pinky. Where do you see neshama in a pinky? You don't see the neshama in your elbow or in your toes. The place where you see a neshama, which means something beyond flesh, blood, and muscles and tissue, the physical body, is the two places, the brain and the heart. That's where there is intellectual activity, and in the heart where there's emotional activity. That's where you can see openly. But the truth is, the neshama is in every part of my body. Every part of the body that's alive, Baruch Hashem, has neshama in it. So too, that's what it means. There's certain places where the Shekhinah is more pronounced than other places. For this we understand that in addition to the small temple, which means every shul, embodied in all the synagogues and all the study halls of Babel, there's one main small temple that this one stands instead of, this is like in the place of Yerushalayim, and this is called the shul, which is, I skipped the paragraph, Shaf v'Yofesh. Look at the middle paragraph. The name of the shul is called Shaf v'Yofesh. Yoshin. What does that mean in Aramaic? It alludes to the fact that there's one place that holds the primary manifestation of the Shekhinah. And this is how the Mefarshim explain the name of the shul. Shaf v'Yofesh means it traveled and it settled. Who traveled and who settled? Indicating that the Shekhinah that used to exist only in the Beis Hamikdash of Yerushalayim traveled to a place of Golus, and over there it's settled in this spot. That means that the building of the Beis Hamikdash was destroyed, but this presence of Shekhinah that used to be in Yerushalayim, in the Beis Hamikdash, traveled and it settled in the shul of Rav in Babel. Now the Rebbe goes into another question. So how's it all going to happen when Mashiach comes? Let's look at this next page, page 4. Even after the Jewish people are redeemed and all the shuls and all the study halls will be established in Eretz Yisrael, this shul, which belongs to the Nasi of the generation, which is the shul in Babel, the shul in France, and the shul in Italy, and the shul in Russia, and the shul in Poland, and the shul in every country in the world. In each generation, there was a different shul that was that special shul. I'm thinking maybe in Rashi's time, it was Rashi's shul. In the Rambam's time, it was the Rambam shul. The Arizal time, it was the Arizal shul. Every generation. These shuls will also be different even when Mashiach comes. Why? Only during the time of exile does the Shekhinah reside by the small temples in the land where the Jewish people were exiled. In other words, now the Shekhinah is all over the world, in all the different countries, in these shuls. But when Mashiach comes, the manifestation of the Shekhinah will return to Yerushalayim. It will not remain in those places where the Jews were exiled. In other words, they're not going to say, being that the Shekhinah was here now, so Mashiach comes, the Shekhinah will remain here. No, the building is going to move. In other words, the small temples will relocate to Eretz Yisrael, to the Beis Hamikdash, and the Shekhinah will no longer be present in the places where the small temples stood during exile. Indeed, this is why the Medrash says that the future Beis Hamikdash will be the size of today's Yerushalayim. Could you imagine? The Beis Hamikdash will be the size of the whole city of Yerushalayim. What are they going to do with such a huge Beis Hamikdash? So the answer is because all the places where there were shuls and study halls once stood will become attached to the Beis Hamikdash in Yerushalayim. By the way, everything you see here is not the Rebbe's novel idea. This is all from Gemara. On the bottom of the page there are numbers, and each one gives you a reference where it's written. Some of these things sound wild. What do you mean? My shul is going to be attached to the Beis Hamikdash? Yeah. Every shul will be relocate and be attached to the Beis Hamikdash. So what will be the difference then between the shuls of the great tzaddikim and other shuls? Next page, number 5. In light of this explanation, the small temples assume an even greater quality that previously explained. If all the places in exile where the synagogue stood will become appended to the Beis Hamikdash, now already in exile, the synagogue is the very place of the future temple. That's what I told you before. And it's interesting because imagine if someone would tell you, don't tell anyone this is a top secret. I have a piece of wood that I was told that this piece of wood is going to be used in the Beis Hamikdash in the future. You'd get pretty excited if I would tell you that. If I would tell you that. Because there's a story in Gemara.
Excited?
No, I am telling you, you know what I'm telling you? That this floor and these walls will be attached to the Beis Hamikdash. That's my point that I want to bring out. But there's a similar story in Gemara. There was one of the sages in Gemara, his name was Rabbi Yochanan. And he was giving a class, and he spoke about a pasuk in Tanakh where it says, V'hoyu, Shimshir Sayich. He explained the pasuk when Moshiach comes in the Beis Hamikdash, the windows will be made of diamonds that will be the size of a window. Huge. So there was one student thinking to himself, okay, come on, that's an exaggeration. You can't find a diamond that's even the size of an egg. You're going to find a diamond that's the size of a window. Well, he dismissed it. Then he went traveling, and in his travel, he stopped off at an island. Obviously, this student wasn't an ordinary person either, because on the island, the Gemara says he saw angels. And the angels were carrying these huge, huge diamonds. And he walked over to the angels and says, what are you carrying? What are these diamonds all about? So they said, we're preparing this for the Beis Hamikdash HaShlishim. He went back to his Rebbe and said, Rebbe, I want to tell you, please continue to teach because what you teach is really true. I saw it with my own eyes. Unfortunately, he didn't have a very happy ending because really what he told his Rebbe was they didn't believe you. And that was considered offensive. But I'm trying to bring out the point. Imagine you would see something and someone would tell you, this is going to be part of the building of the Beis Hamikdash. So what it's saying here is that every shul, every yeshiva will be part of the Beis Hamikdash in the future. What will be the difference? Yeah. I think the difference between that and what's not a shul is, for example, sometimes people gather in their home and they make a minyan, they daven. So even though they're davening there, but you can't say this building was designated as a shul. So I think any building in any room that has been designated specifically, exclusively for davening or learning, that would be considered shul and yeshiva. But let's say, for example, Chabad houses, a lot of Chabad houses, when they first come out, they don't have enough money to buy another building. They take the dining room and they designate it as a shul. I think if they designated that this room is going to be used as a shul, so it becomes, it has the same care as a shul.
Obviously, it has to be like following the law, having reasons why people
Well, of course, it has, if it's a shul that follows halacha, if it's not a shul that doesn't follow halacha, then it's not a shul, according to halacha.
Right.
Shul has to be built a certain way with certain rules, with a pizza and other things. Yes, Abby.
I drew a specific example. If you have a Chabad house that doesn't have a separate space or have a multi-purpose space where they daven with the minyan, but then after davening, like they take down the pizza and they put up tables like it's also a dining. But
Right.
that count?
That's what I'm saying. I think being that they're designating, in other words, they're designating, I designated my house to be used as a shul.
But it's both. It's designating the same area for both purposes.
Right, right. And it could be, I mean, I don't know how that works, but if I'd be in charge, I'd say, okay, it should be a shul. They can go to Israel.
I agree.
Okay, you agree. I think there are a lot of Chabad houses like that all over the
So
country.
very totally pick when they want to adopt.
What? No, everybody will still have their shuls. You know, someone asked a question. What's going to happen with? We're going to learn about it in the Gemara. So I'm running ahead of myself, but okay, I'll in the Gemara. This Friday we won't have Gemara, so I'll share it with you anyway. The Gemara asked the question: what's going to happen to David HaMelech when Moshiach comes? Moshiach will be the king, so David HaMelech will be demoted. Shlomo HaMelech will be demoted. These are great. These are kings. These are leaders. What's going to happen with all the other leaders when Moshiach comes? So the Gemara says that David HaMelech will be also a king. He'll be like second in command to Mashiach. And from this, we understand that applies to all the kings, and same with all the leaders. Like I just finished saying, Rashi was the leader of his generation. So Mashiach comes, he's going to be demoted to be a regular person. So when it says in many places that Mashiach comes, all the generations are going to come back, and all the leaders of their generation will continue to be leaders of their generations, and they'll all be under the leadership of Mashiach. Think of Moshe Rabbeinu. There were 12 tribes. Each tribe had a nasi. A nasi means a leader, and each nasi was the leader of his tribe, and Moshe was the leader of all the leaders. Like what?
Master delegator.
Master delegator, right? They're gonna have to work it out, yeah. But they, like someone once said to me, yeah, they're talking about this controversy, but in a humorous way. This guy said, "I can't imagine that the Rebbe would be Mashiach. I love wearing my shtreimel, and if that happens, I'm gonna have to take off my shtreimel." So I said, "What do you think? Mashiach comes, all the people that have different customs and different ways, and everything's gonna stop. It'll all continue. Everyone will have their Rebbe, everyone will have their leader, and everyone will have their way of dress. But then it'll all blend together like a symphony. It wouldn't be differences that are one against the other. Each one will complement the other, like we see the way it is in a symphony. Everybody's playing a different instrument, and it sounds different, but symphony means that when it's all done together, there's nothing more beautiful than that. And that is going to be the beauty when Mashiach comes. But all leaders will still be leading. So therefore, I imagine when he asked a question about the shul, let's say there's a man who was a rav in the shul. So when Mashiach comes, he's going to lose his job. I'm sure he'll still be the rabbi of his synagogue. So his synagogue will come back, and his people will come back, and he'll be the rabbi of the people. I once saw where it said there was a meeting amongst Rabbanim in Poland. In Poland, there was a rabbi, his name was Meir Shapiro. He was a brilliant rabbi, and he made a yeshiva called Chachmei Lublin. I don't know if you ever heard of it. Lublin is a city in Poland. And this is a yeshiva only for brilliant people, which means you had to be a genius even to get into the yeshiva. By the way, he's the one who initiated what we know today as Daf Yomi, to learn every day of Gemara. Anyway, so they were at a meeting, and someone said, wait a second. We know that when Mashiach comes, every rabbi will come back and every community will come back. So the rabbi will continue to be the rabbi of his congregation, or the rabbi of a city will continue to be the rabbi of that city. But what happens if the people in the community don't deserve to come back with the case HaMesim? And the rabbi does. What's he going to do? What? Very good. So that was his answer. He said, if the community, if his community doesn't deserve to come back with Case HaMesim, then he doesn't deserve to come back with Case HaMesim. How could he have a community that he didn't make sure to see that they all deserve to come back? But let's not worry, because we'll learn a little bit later. Maybe Rabbi Geulah spoke about it, that ultimately it says every single Yid will come back with Case HaMesim, and there's no one who is excluded from that experience, no matter what. So it is reasonable to assume, next paragraph, that a particular synagogue's point of attachment to the future Beis HaMikdash will depend on its spiritual level during the exile. In other words, those synagogues surpassing all others in greatness, like the synagogue of Hutzel and the synagogue of Shav Yavesh, which the Gemara talks about in those days in Babylon, or would be the synagogue of Rabbi Yehuda Nasi, or the synagogue of Rashi, or the synagogue of Rambam, or the synagogue of the Baal Shem Tov. All these shuls, if they were the shul of the leader of the generation, then when Mashiach comes, will be closer to the Beis HaMikdash. They will actually touch it and be joined to it. And they will be the medium through which all the other synagogues of the diaspora will be attached to the Beis HaMikdash. So Beis Rabbeinu, that shul which is called the house of our Rebbe, in Gemara it means Rav, will continue to possess an advantage over other synagogues and study halls. when the Rebbe gave the Sikha, of course he's speaking about all the shuls and all the generations, but he was specifically also referring to 770, and he said, being that in our generation, the Rebbe is the Nasi of the generation, so therefore this is the shul in our generation that has the Shekhinah in it, in this sort of greater level. The interesting thing is, this is part of the Sikha, it came out of the whole booklet, and every paragraph has references exactly where the source is. And someone told me once that on one hand, you read such words, people who are not so much into Chabad, you get a little bit sort of not so comfortable. He's saying that the Rebbe Shul is something different, this and that, and all these things that's going to be next to the Beis HaMikdash. So there was a guy on a plane who was studying this Sikha when it came out, and next to him there was someone else who was a religious Jew and it looked like a learned Jew, but not Chabad. And he was worried he might see the words in the Sikha and get a little bit excited. So he sort of read it like this, that he should be able to see what's going on there. He read it like this. After a while, the other person says to him, by the way, you don't have to hide what you're reading there. I know that Sikha. Really? How do you know the Sikha? And he tells him a story that there were some people who were very upset about what it says there. And he actually wanted to come out with some sort of a statement, statement that the Sikha is a little bit exaggerated and it's too much. But they said before they come out with a statement, we should really look and see exactly what it says. I was one of the people who was chosen to do the research. We did the research, and then we saw that every single paragraph that's written there is based on the Gemara, and based on Marsha, and based on commentary Gemara. There's really nothing new. The only new thing that the Rebbe says that in our generation is the previous Rebbe Shul, but all the words and all the ideas that it speaks about different shul, all that is in Gemara. That's the source. Yes, sir.
Why would anyone want to daven in the outside ones?
Why would anybody?
Want to daven in the outside ones? Like if we have our Chabad house and we put 7,000 right next to it, why would we?
I guess because on the other hand, so the 70 is a big place and it's very overwhelming. And in your shul, you have your spots. Somebody want to describe what it's like davening in 770. You sit down, you open your siddur, take a look at the clock, and you turn around. What happened to my siddur? Somebody else picked it up. You want to sit down on your seat. Excuse me, this is my seat. What do you mean? I sit here every Shabbos. I come here first. 770 is the whole world comes here every week. Can I know her? And there's groups here. What? It'll fit, but I'm just saying it has its advantages, and then there's also the advantage of each individual. Think of it this way: it's like saying all the Jewish people have an advantage. We're all one, but at the same time, we're all individuals. We have our own individual personality, individual life, individual family, and we have to sort of connect to both. I think I told you it was there. I once said there's a documentary that was done on Chabad, and I ended up being the person that interviewed there. This was done in 1989, maybe 90. It used to be exclusive, but now it's on YouTube. I think it's called one. I forgot what it's called. Whatever, it's on YouTube. You can see it, but it was done during Tishrei, and the people who did the documentary, one was from BBC, one was an Israeli company, and one was a German company. And this is the first time they all three worked together. But one of the questions they asked me, this was asked by the guy from the BBC, don't you guys ever have a personal life also? Like it was Rosh Hashanah. They were running the shul for Rosh Hashanah. Then we're doing Kapparas. And then we're going to the Yom Kippur, and then this and that, the Sukkot. Do you have a personal life? I said, you came the wrong time of the year. We have a personal life. We have a home, and there's a lot of mitzvahs which we perform in our home. Husband and wife and children and Shabbos table and Yom Tov table. We are our personal. Then there's a life where we have together as a community. And the truth is, if you look at the whole year around, we'll see that it's balanced. So I think the same thing here. 770 is a general shul, and for one purpose, yes, that's where everybody comes together. On the other hand, each of us are individuals, we have an individual space, but that you need a little shul as well. Yeah,
Yeah, I just went into it, it's interesting how Judaism makes, there's different levels of greatness, that's not, in the secular world, that's considered a bad concept.
levels.
No, that like this is better than this, that everything is equal, and in Judaism, we're said, no, this is greater, and but at the same time, we're also taught, I think personal work that whatever level we're at, as long as we're growing.
Not only that, but everybody on that level has an advantage on someone on the other level. In other words, even that level, let's say a Kohen is higher than a Levi, but there's an advantage in a Levi over a Kohen. A Kohen is higher than an Israelite who is not Kohen and not Levi. But there's an advantage in the Israelite. Everything in Judaism has an advantage over the other. And one of the examples of this is the Sefer Torah. The Sefer Torah has 600,000 letters, and it's all one. So if one letter is missing, one letter is missing one leg, the whole Torah, the whole entire Torah becomes disqualified because it's all one. On the other hand, each letter must be a separate letter. If two letters are touching, the ink is touching, it's also disqualified. What does it mean? This is the message. Each letter is an individual, and it has its own purpose, as a hey, a vav, a zayin, a ches, a tes, aleph, or beis. And then on another level, it's all one, and it constitutes one Sefer Torah. Same thing with us, it's the individual. Okay, let's start the next one. Maybe we'll need more time to go into it. And that is the 10th Psalm. And about one of the things that it says in the Medrash is that throughout history, there are 10 historic songs that were sung, praising Hashem for miracles. I make a mistake, not 10, there were 9. And the 10th song will be sung when Moshiach comes. What are the 9? So the first page you're looking at is the Medrash in English, and it enumerates what they are, but let's go through the pages here. First of all, we see this in 2 places. If you turn the page, Friday night we say this Tehillim. It's underlined on page number 3. Shiru Lashem Shir Chadash. Sing to God a new song. What it's referring to is the song we're going to sing when Mashiach comes. No, I take that back. Look at the next page. Before Shemona Esrei, it says Shira Chadasha, a new song. But the difference is the first one, new song, is written in masculine, Shir. And the second one is written in feminine, Shira. Shira, like the name Shira, like the Kala of Machaliados. Shira is feminine. Shir is masculine. And there's a hey at the end of the word. So the Gemara says that when Mashiach comes, the redemption will be identified by feminine, not by masculine. By masculine, not by feminine.
Which way?
By masculine. Why? What does it mean? Because all the other times that we were in Golus and went out of Golus, after the Golus was over, we went back to Golus again, a few hundred years later. This one was over, back to Golus again. So this is the Gemara's analogy. I'm sure there's more depth to it, but this is the analogy. That a mother was giving birth to a baby, is going through terrible pain. Very, very difficult pain, which is labor pain. But once the baby is born, it stops, right? But if the baby is a baby girl, what happens? 20 years later, she goes through the same thing again. And then she has a baby. And then 20 years later, her baby goes through the same thing again. But if the baby that's born is a boy, there's no labor next time. So it means to say that the Geulah, it's an analogy to say that the Geulah, the redemption, is like the masculine, which means it won't be labor pain again, it'll be forever good.
I'm confused because you're saying there's, the Shara has the feminine.
The feminine is the one that's temporary, and the masculine is the one that's permanent. Because once a baby boy is born, then the pattern of pain stops. This baby boy won't have pain. You know, they tell that story with his husband, his wife was in the living room and he's pacing the floor back and forth for 2-3 hours. And finally the doctor opens the door and says, Mazel tov, Mazel tov. You know, thank you. What's the baby? A boy or a girl? The baby is a girl. So, oh, thank God. She won't have to go through what I just went through the last 3 hours, waiting, you know, for the news. So the next pages are actually listing all the 10. Naturally, the first one we know was when the Yidden went out of Mitzrayim by the Yam Suf. Oziel Shemosha. That's on page number 5. I think we'll have to do this next time, page number 6. Every page is another one of those songs in history. And then you see altogether there's 9, and Moshiach comes, will be number 10. Okay, to be continued.